So the camera's over here, though. We have to look over here and tell them hi, welcome back. You have to look at the camera. Come here. Welcome back to the video. Or do you want me to move it down for you? Alright, tell them welcome back. Today we're talking about books. Oh, no, did not want to talk about books at all. Not at all. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Amber Campbell. I'm an indie author and a freelance editor, and today I want to talk about how to make your self-published titles blend in with the traditionally published books on your shelf. And I have 8 examples that we're going to look at throughout the video today. And I just want everyone in the comments to kind of go down there and put your guesses in of how many of these 8 are traditionally published titles and how many are self-published titles. And there might be some hybrids, you might recognize some, but as of recording this, January 2024, which ones are listed as traditional and which ones are listed as self-published? And the answer might surprise you. So these are all bestsellers on Amazon as well as at Barnes & Noble. So these aren't just, random Amazon success stories. These are widely published titles. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Alrighty, I've got my notes in front of me. I have got my computer in front of me so I can look at the covers with you guys. And firstly, let's go into trim size. This is something that I did not even think of before I self-published my first title, The Ones, back in September of 2023. And I did research. I looked at all of the books that were on the Barnes & Noble shelf to see how they stacked up with each other. I looked at a lot of YouTube videos of the brilliant booktubers who actually have their bookshelves behind them and how nicely they looked when they were all the same height. That's what we're aiming for. So of these 8 titles, 5 of them were 5 by 8 inches. 1 was 5.25 by 8 inches. 1 was 5.06 by 7.81 inches. And 1 was 5 by 7.7 inches. So are these all the same? No. Are they about the same? Yes. Definitely you want to go for the 5. If you want to do 5 by 2.5, that's personal preference because the width is not as important as the height. We want them to be all the same. As you see, 2 of these 8 are slightly shorter, but they're not drastic. It's not like we have a bunch of 5 by 8s and then a random 6 by 9. Don't recommend publishing poetry in a 6 by 9. That is more reserved for fantasy and sci-fi, but more importantly, it's reserved for the hardcovers. Most paperbacks will not be that large. It just doesn't look right, and it definitely does not blend in. And before we go any further, when I say blend in, I mean you don't want to stand out as a self-published author to readers necessarily, because there are still a lot of readers who have apprehension about self-published titles. Most of the time it's not edited well or the cover does not match at all. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about. But trim size, if you're publishing on Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing Platform, or KDP, you definitely want to choose a 5 by 8. And like I said, you can do 5.25 by 8, but I would not change the height at all. It's going to blend in better, and it's also going to still maximize your profit. So I have 2 books currently published on KDP. It costs $2.50 to print each of them, and they're 5 by 8s. My poetry, the word count tends to be longer or the same as what you'll find on Amazon and Barnes & Noble shelves. However, my poems are longer. They're like a full page. A lot of these, the poem is only a couple lines or a half page. That's really what the modern poetry, I think, movement is going towards. However, I do a blend. I do long poetry. I do short ones. My upcoming collection in August is actually going to have some short stories in there as well. So mine are usually about 125 pages, give or take. But that's just kind of where I'm at right now in my journey. Some of these are 200 pages. Some of them are like 114. It all depends. Basically, for a good poetry collection, I would say at least 80 pages is going to get you a really good, give you a good look for readers who are looking for poetry. Next up, let's go straight to the juicy part, the covers. So I'm going to go through my computer as I talk about these with you guys. The biggest thing that we're going to notice is there is one solid color. I did this with my first poetry collection, The Ones. It was a very dark charcoal gray. And then my second book, Missed Arrows, has a slight gradient to it. So there's nothing wrong with having a slight gradient, but as you'll see with the examples I'm putting up on screen, this is a one solid color background. Again, this is personal preference, but if you want to blend in and look like you're traditionally published, the solid color background is what you're going to want to aim for. So you do see some differences. So we have Milk and Honey, Poems for the End of the World, we have Pillow Thoughts, all of those, poems for the neurodivergent experience. All those are black backgrounds. Those are very popular. You have a couple that have a brown background, Healing for No One But Me. I love the illustrations on that cover. However, the white on a medium brown may be hard to read on a mobile device, so you want to make sure you have that contrast. Something a lot of cover designers do is when they're finished with the design and the typography, they'll go ahead and put it in black and white to make sure you can still read the words, see the main design, and read the author's name. If you cannot do that easily, there needs to be more contrast. I would recommend more contrast on that one, just because it's a little hard to read, but all this author would have to do, or publisher, whoever, cover designer, would have to do is actually go ahead and just make that darker brown. That would fix it. She Is the Poem was done a little differently. So even though they're both shades of pink, it's very readable. You have no problem seeing what that title is. And same for Dear Self, as well as The Way Forward. So The Way Forward, it does have multicolor in terms of black, white, and the blue, but very easy to read. You can definitely tell what it says. And for Dear Self, it's very obvious. It's the black on the blue. So as long as you've got black words, typography, you can pretty much do any light color background. And then Poems for the End of the World also utilize multiple colors because they're going for that galaxy look. And so that's just really what you want to look for. You want to look for that solid color. You want to have that main image in the front. That's another huge thing among poetry. And quite frankly, it just kind of works. As you can see, there are 2 titles on here that have no image on the front, Dear Self, as well as She Is the Poem. But they're also very explainable, I think. I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. You can look at that and you know it's poetry. That's what you want to go for. You don't necessarily have to have the word poems or poems and prose on the top. If your cover does what it is supposed to do, you don't have to put poems. You don't have to put a novel. The reader's going to know the genre, and they're going to know immediately if that's what they're looking for or not. That's what a great cover does. So study the covers of your field, of your genre, and try to mimic it without being exactly the same. And that's very difficult to do. Poetry, if you look at my titles, I had the ivy going around it, but there was no really focal image. That's the only thing I would probably do differently, is maybe have the ivy go through the middle a little bit more. And then for Missed Arrows, just maybe picking a solid color in the background rather than the gradient. But I am very partial to that gradient because I absolutely think it's adorable and I love it. But I do like that focal image. I think it probably should have been a little bit smaller, but again, this is my second title. You are more than allowed to make mistakes with your first 5 books, okay? They usually say your first book is like a pancake. It's definitely going to have errors in terms of kind of how you marketed it, how you designed it. Should not have errors editing wise. Let's just clear that up right now. But that is what a good cover should do. They should be able to look at it and know exactly what the genre is, and it should also blend in with the other ones that are currently next to it. As far as formatting goes, a couple of these, like She Is the Poem, if you go ahead and pick it up, there's not really sections. It's just one long collection. Older school poetry collections followed the same thing. However, with the modern poetry, we are finding more sections. So that's how I would recommend the formatting go for your poetry collection. Is you can divide it up into 3 sections, 4. It's been a while since I've read Pillow Thoughts by Courtney Peppernell. However, I'm pretty sure this one has 7 or 8 different sections. But yeah, it doesn't even tell me on here. I'm looking at it. But that's something that readers really like. They want to know that even if there's not a solid storyline like I put in Missed Arrows, there's at least something that they're following to understand. You start with basically Act 1, if you will, and then we move into the heavy stuff, and then we move into some kind of happily ever after, lesson learned, things like that. And it's not required at all, but it's something that currently readers of modern poetry are enjoying. So if there's a way you could do it, I would recommend it. If not, make sure that the entire collection follows one idea. And I think that's usually why poets try to find the sections, because it helps us figure out the direction of the entire collection versus just A to Z with no interlocking ideas. And so, like, for me personally, I like to know that there's ups and downs within the poetry that I'm reading, and it's not just one idea all the way through, if that makes sense. But of course, it's also a preference. You write it however you like, but that's just something to keep in mind for the formatting. Lastly is the title. So for those of you who probably know, when it comes to fantasy, it's the blank of blank and blank, right? That's the common thing to see. Poetry is much more simplistic. You can go with something very tangible, like milk and honey, or you can go with pillow thoughts, dear self, things like that. They're very direct, and we can kind of imagine how they are. Or you can go with the overall, I think, theme, or nowadays the vibe of the poetry collection. Healing for no one but me, she is the poem, poems for the end of the world, poems for the neurodivergent experience. I don't know why that one is so hard for me to say, but something that helps us understand what it is about. We should be able to read the title and kind of get an idea. So for example, poems for the end of the world, don't imagine would have a lot of love poetry, while she is the poem, I imagine would probably have love poetry. Pillow thoughts is just something that kind of comes to your head when you're asleep. So maybe it could be all the things that you wanted to accomplish or things that haunt you. And that's kind of what you're looking at, the way forward. I'm assuming that's something positive. So if you can try to convey the thematic message of your poetry in the title, that's what you really want to follow to help blend in with the other titles that are on the shelves. Otherwise, it's really open. There's really no formula for poetry titles like there is in fantasy. And honestly, the best thing that you can do is just go into a bookstore and look at your genre's shelf and see what's going on. As I said, you're not trying to mimic it. You don't want to write something that's, the Court of Thorn and Roses, like, exactly necessarily. And something different could help you stand out. Like I know with Katie Wismer, she has talked about this in one of her videos. Also, I'll give the answer to that in a minute. The question from the beginning. And she said that all of the academic YA new adult had characters with the school uniform on the cover. She didn't want to do that. It actually ended up helping her because she stood out. So use it very strategically. Don't look at it, oh, I'm just going to do something different just so it's different. Have a purpose there. So yes, hers was set in an academic setting, but it's a paranormal. So it's okay to have something paranormal on an academic setting. So you want to be strategic. You want to think about how you're going to market it, and you want to think about what the readers are going to think. If it's something drastically different, it needs to help them understand the story better. If it's just something random, they're probably not even going to click on it. They're not going to read even the sample because nothing is cohesive. Alrighty, so we are going into the final part of these 8 titles. As of January 2024, 3 are traditionally published, 5 are self-published. Let me reiterate, these are bestsellers in the poetry categories. And that just goes to show that if you blend in, most readers cannot tell if you're self-published or traditionally published, which is what the goal is. We want them to see it and immediately go, oh, that looks great. Let's be honest, we're aesthetic people. If it, like, the cover is pretty and it looks like it's going to match what's on their shelf, we're going to get it. Like, that's just how our brains work. But that is all of the tips I have for ensuring that your self-published titles blend in with the traditionally published titles on the shelf. Let me know what your tips and tricks are, what your genre is, and things that you do to make sure that your genre matches. And thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you all next week, and talk soon. Bye.
There was once a day that I would pray for you. I'd go and misbehave just so you'd notice too. Sneaking looks up and down from across the room. Damn, what a hell of a view. I feel good, you look great, I like you.